Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Hellbound. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up with So-yoon going to New Truth. Because I guess Yoon-jae hadn't told her everything about... because he did in his comment about, they'll expose him, but I guess she's just more of a devout believer in the New Truth, so, him being told it's a complete and utter horseshit, or he kind of bought into it a little bit more than she did, because she is a devout believer, I think. Not necessarily that she's all about it, but at the very least, this is the way the world's been for the past 4 years, so you can't help but especially when half the world, cements itself to this belief, it's kind of hard to fight it. So she ignores Young-jae's call and he's racing there, and Hyejin is like, oh, we'll meet you there. So Deacon Yuji brings this to the committee that's at the top, including Jeongchil. Now the thing is, Yuji's all about this. I thought when the time came, I was thinking okay, Yuji will probably because he's a devout believer and his beliefs come crashing down, he'll see the light. Nah, he knows this is a scam. He knows it is, but he's all about it. He'll justify it later on by being oh, it's just, I'm trying to save the world, you're going to allow more sinners, because they want to still perpetuate, even though it's a lie, we're doing more good because, crime is down. It's but that was a whole point that Young-jae had brought up in episode 4. It's no, if you took all the crime that the Arrowheads are doing that's just not getting reported or at least prosecuted, you see that crime is actually at an all-time high because they believe, God is on our side. We're doing, you're just using, once again, any radical, you're just using God as an excuse to do the terrible things you're doing and try to say, it's divine, calling that you're doing what you're doing. So that's all it is. And, but Yuji's just he knows this is BS. A lot of people at the top, I thought only the committee knew. I thought everyone else, but I guess if you're a deacon, you're brought into the fold. It seems like Yuji's all about it. I don't know about the other deacons because they seem like they kind of folded pretty quickly near the end, but, I'm getting a little ahead of myself in that regard. But now it's a whole conversation of well, what do we do? Well, we got to first and foremost separate the baby from the mother, and then we'll figure out who else knows about this. So they try to separate the So-yoon from Toki, and obviously she wasn't about it. She's like, no, let me stay with my baby. Luckily, Soto, one of its members, created a distraction. He was like, I'm about to, demonstration's about to happen in 10 minutes. Or maybe it should happen over here. Maybe he's just causing a ruckus. So Hyejin, Young-jae, and one of the other Soto members was able to kind of slip through. And when the time came, and once again, Hyejin, it's nah, I'm getting to work. It's I like that because we have a near-death experience like that. Like I said, because she was just a lawyer before, she probably might have known if she knew any self-defense, it probably wasn't much. She definitely no, I'm never going to be in that situation again. I'm going to have to fight. And so pulls out that baton, gets to work, throwing people through glass and stuff. I'm yeah, because I'm glad she's kind of getting her revenge against New Truth, because not only did they try to kill her, they killed her mom, and they've been perpetuating this lie that's allowed Arrowhead to continue, not just Arrowhead, but New Truth to continue hurting and so many people. So when it was all said and done, they were luckily able to get So-yoon, the baby, and Young-jae out of there. Obviously, they tried blocking every path, but luckily they got away. But now the question is, well, where did they go? And they switch cars, and they meet up with a guy. And it's I was I wonder, who do we know this guy? Because we get introduced to him. It's Dong-wook, or it might be Wook. I was thinking, in my head, Dong-wook. But we got interested in him because he's where they're staying at the time. And he brings up the fact is that he used to be a devout believer and stuff like that. And then I was like, oh, really? I was like, who are you? I was like, are you someone we're supposed to recognize? And then he brings up, I used to live stream. I'll get my equipment. I was like, I was like, are you Skull Mask? And then we seen the cloud. I'm like, you're fucking Skull Mask. Interesting. Because I had asked that, I want to say in one of the previous episodes, I'm like, we haven't seen any broadcasts from, Skull Mask. Now we know Dong-wook. I think his name is in the credits earlier on, but I don't because I said the only thing they ever refer to him as in the subtitle I saw that one time was it was a skull mask, I think, was like what they referred to him as, because his name wasn't known then. But it turns out he got a decree a couple years ago, and that's when he backed down, because he believed wholeheartedly in this whole thing that, he's like, oh, I was all about it, and I followed the doctrine to the T, but then I got my decree, and he was like, no, there's no way I could have committed any sin. So for him, he feels justified, he feels rectified in the fact is that, like, oh, your baby, there's no way your baby could have done a sin, so that makes it that I didn't commit a sin, so, But, yeah, that was interesting. But, Hyejin went public with, like, we're going to do this with the baby, because she had told So-yoon, like, they had to make a choice now, because the fact is, now that this is out there in the open, they're going to hurt you and Young-jae and, your baby. But it's like, this way, your baby's demonstration could be used to put an end to, like, all the people that have been victims to New Truth. Like, this could be the way to expose New Truth and have, like, the house of cards finally come crumbling down around them. But even So-yoon's like, I don't really have much of a choice, do I? Like, there is no real choice in this situation. And it's like, kind of no. Because it's going to happen one way or another, but at the very least, you can stop these people from perpetuating this. I mean, hell, like, cut back to them. Obviously, your boy, Young Chio was not too happy and started smacking the hell out of Yuji, which, to be fair, like, I think that's, maybe it's an Asian thing, but I think that's specifically Korea thing, because I read a manhwa years ago called Unbalanced and Balance. I think it's a really good romance manhwa if you've never read it before. It's kind of like a teacher-student relationship. It's kind of, it's weird, like, in a framing of, like, what it is about, but in the context of the story, it's not weird. I mean, maybe it's just because I look at it as fictional, so I don't look at it as the real-life stipulations, plus the ages are, like, I won't get into it, but it's a really good romance novel, at least, in my opinion. To be fair, I did read it, like, years ago, so I was, like, closer to the main protagonist's age at the time. But regardless, tangents and all that aside, I highly recommend you read. Like, that's why I learned, like, oh, slapping in Korea isn't, like, a bad thing. Like, teachers will literally smack the hell out of their students. That, once again, that might be just an Asian thing in general, but you don't see that in many places. Like, but there it's acceptable. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if that's, like, specifically an entire, like, an Asian culture thing, or is that specifically I feel like that could apply to a lot of other, but I know it's specifically definitely from a Korean culture perspective. I just don't know if that's, but it's just like, the fact is, it's just like the disrespect of just like you just really wouldn't do that no matter what the circumstances are. I mean, I guess it's like when you look at movies and stuff like that, guys, like, the bosses beat up their henchmen, so it's kind of that, but the fact is he's like slapping them all over the place like that. Because it's like, oh, you failed me and stuff like that. How are we going to rectify this? Because now that Hyejin's put it out there, it's like everyone's going to be looking forward to it. So, like, what do we do? And one of the guys is like, well, we can add in original sin. But it's like, no, that's not going to work. Because we already laid it out in our doctrine that it's human sin. Like, if we add in the original sin, like, the reason why we're able to gain so much traction, so much influence really quickly is because we didn't go with the original sin, that we believed it's just human sin in general is why this happened. And it's like, and this also clarifies what I was wondering before, because I was like, I thought it was Christianity or Catholicism that had the original sin. It seems like it's Christianity. A lot of religions, like, are close to each other, so maybe, like, Catholicism has that same element as well. I will tell you, theology-wise, I'm not that well-versed in the differences between Catholicism and Christianity. Once again, I'm not well-versed in theology in general, but regardless, it's like, because we did that, like, if people find out we're just like Christianity, it's not going to make us look like hypocrites. It's like, well, what's the point? It's like, wait, I thought this was different, because it is also going to expose, like, wait, if that's the case, why wasn't it originally part of your doctrine? At least Christianity, it's been baked in for a long time, but this is a new religion, and so you could make some excuses. They're like, oh, we can make it seem like the baby, if there is a demonstration, is fake. It's like, yeah, but then if we do that, people start wondering, well, were our live demonstrations that we broadcasted fake as well? So they find themselves in quite the conundrum, and now it's a back and forth about, like, well, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And, like, no one has any idea. But that bastard, Dong-wook, decided to sell them out. The moment he wanted to leave, I was like, you're going to sell them out, aren't you? Because despite everything, he's a true believer. So he tried to, because he was like wanting a deacon position and stuff like that, because he was like, I'm all about this. And yet for him, it's like, it doesn't make any sense, because the reason why this all sparked for him, it's like that baby came into my life, that my decree said 3. Once again, like, I don't understand why the severity is so, there's definitely a reasoning behind it, we just don't know yet. But I think it's so interesting, like the ranges. It's like the baby's got its decree about 3 days ago, going to be 3 days ago when the time happens, but you got yours 3 years ago. So that's why I'm like, why years and days and sometimes minutes, seconds for people? Like, that's why I'm like, I don't understand. But basically, his decree basically sets his 5 minutes. His demonstration is going to be 5 minutes after the baby gets done in. So that's the thing of like, he thinks that there's a reasoning behind it, and oh boy, Jiang Chil and his committee, they swoozed their way around it, because at first he was like, oh, don't patronize me. They're like, no, of course not, we wouldn't do that. And then one of the people put on the phone, like, tell him he's the Messiah, and Jiang Chil leaned into it, he was like, oh yeah, like, you were chosen, because obviously this baby being chosen was a mistake. God needs you to rectify his mistake. And he's like, oh, right. It's like, that's why you don't go, no, I should call you Messiah. And it's like, yeah, just tell us where you are. It's like, I'm not going to tell you that just for you deacons to come in and swoop in and steal all the credit and glory. Like, because he did a lot with Arrow, being a leader of like a head honcho and Arrowhead and stuff like that. He, that's why his live streams were so popular. Like, he's like, I did a lot of work for this religion. And it's like, I'm not about to have someone else come swooping in and take the credit. He's like, oh, I'll leave you a clue. So he tossed his phone. So if they decide to trace his phone, they'll get the general of most general areas. But, so you're like, man, that bastard. You would think getting your decree and like recognizing, like, now finding out that it's all BS, but he's so ingrained into it because he cannot. I think it's purely a thing of, I don't want to go back to just being a nobody. Like, being part of Arrowhead, it made it like, it's like, I think it's the stardom aspect to it, that celebrity of it. He became someone important. Now, he didn't lean into that, but I think that's what it is, because that's why he's leaning into this. Like, oh, I was chosen by God. Like, his warped perception of like, yeah, I'm like, this is all of God's will. It's like, you're also doing it because you probably made a pretty penny off of. You were also just like well received, and you got to be someone important in the grand scheme of things, but like finding out that the baby, it contradicts the doctrine, but he's so all about this. He's so fanatic that he'll create any excuses he can, just showing like he was never the most stable human being to begin with. He latched onto something, and so he's willing to jump to any lengths and hoops he needs to justify it in his head. So he's just like, oh, God needs me to rectify this. This was a mistake. It's like, it's like, oh, I thought God didn't make mistakes. So it's like, it's like he's trying to like have his cake and eat it too, which I know people have said like, oh, that phrase doesn't make as much sense as you think it does. But for the sake of this conversation, I'll use it to fit what I'm trying to say, So it's like he's trying to have it all, because he's like, yeah, God made a mistake, but I'm his chosen one, so I'm going to rectify his mistake, because for him, it's like, this is what I was born for. This is why I got that decree. Like, this is my special mission, my special moment. And at the same time, this is all happening. Son Yoon has this really heavy conversation with Hae-jin about like, because I brought it up last episode of like, oh yeah, was it last episode? I believe so, yeah, that Young Jae came home and she was just sitting there not letting the baby cry. And I was like, well, understandable, because you don't want to get too attached. But for her, it's like she hated that the baby was crying. It's like babies cry because they're hungry, they don't feel good. But she realized at the core of it, what is a baby doing crying for? A baby is crying for help. A baby needs help to basically live. And for her, it is the thing of like, what hit her is like, she's never felt that from something else. Someone needing her, like needing to lean on her and need her, like she can, being their only hope. She's never been that for someone. And so in this moment, it's like, my baby needs me. Because, Hyejin was saying, like, you don't have to be there during the demonstration, but she's like, no, I'm going to be there from beginning to end. This is my baby. My baby needs me, and I will be by my baby's side to the very end, But Jeong Wook killed all the people, because they were going to take them all to, like, a different location for the demonstration to happen, but Dongwook went nuts and justified, and like what he was going to do is like, right, when a baby's demonstration happens, I'm gonna hide the body, and then when my demonstration happens, that'll kind of confuse everyone, and then they'll kind of lean back into like the confusion will last for a little bit, but then they'll kind of like that way he's like, God would be thanking me, they're still like, but he thinks like, oh, God's going to be welcoming me with open arms. Like, oh yeah, because I've done what's right by you. Once again, you're still bound for hell, but I guess that doesn't mean as much to you because you're thinking like, no. That's the means that which God is going to like. He has to do that because it's all for the narrative that needs to be created. And then, it's like, what did you think about the afterwards? Like, you'll still be bound in hell, but you're like, you'll still be God's Messiah in hell. Like, that didn't make any sense, but once again, the guy's crazy. He's going to make leaps and bounds just to fit the narrative he needs to. I mean, once again, this is what the whole religion's built around. So luckily Heijin gave Young Jay a taser, but Bastard came into the room, but it's like, yo, Heijin, man, coming in like the VIP that she is, dude. Not VIP, MVP. I love that she's just been kicking ass and taking names like these past episodes, bro. I love it. I mean, she was already being the badass she was, and she just got even more badass out in these last 3 episodes. But she's fighting him off, and Soyun, went outside, and everyone out there is like, whoa, what's going on? And she's like, I want you to watch. My baby is about to have like the demonstration, so that, like, everyone's like live streaming. The new truth people are trying to make their way there. Like I said, your girl Heijin, like, she put in some work taking that bastard down. It's just like every time she, but she got pretty messed up in the tussle. But when the time came, like when they finally showed up for her baby, she couldn't just let her baby die because she's like, I'm going to be here with you. So she tries to protect him. She grabs him, and it turns into like, yo, this is the most like anyone, like, we've never seen anyone fight back this hard. I was like, yo, I was rooting for him. Like, are you going to find a way out of this? Like, Young Jay got up, and he made sure, like, he got into tussle too, like breaking, like even Heijin start bashing one of them with the baton, like, maybe we can find a way around this. They were doing everything they can, and they both got tossed around like crazy. But when the time came, Young Jae, like, tied around because So-yoon held onto the baby, and so did he, and he was like, it's okay, like, basically we're going to go together as a family, we're going to do whatever it takes. And when the time came, the creatures killed them, and it's like, damn, it sucks. Because, because I think in her mind, Heijin was, if the baby died, that sucked already, but now she probably feels like she failed both of them because now they're both dead too, so it hits harder. But then it turns out the baby's still alive. They were able to protect the baby. Now this opens up a whole world of questions. So it's like, the fact is, the creatures never came back to finish the job. They're owed their flesh. And so I guess it's like, right, if you're able to prevent it, if you're able to, like, maybe they have a limited amount of time they can be here, so before they have to, like, go back to, like, their world. So if they don't hit their target, oh well, it's like, because I don't know what it is. I guess maybe the 2 lives it got in exchange is okay. Like, if it gets a soul or kills someone and bounces into hell, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, because, like, because once again, we still don't know why this is happening, why the very specific people that are happening, because it was just a baby was chosen, so it's like, it can't be about sin. Like, there's a bigger thing going here that we still don't know about. But Dongwook was still all about killing the baby. He's like, right, he's like, wait, this is confusing. Like, the baby was supposed to die, but it's actually still alive because his parents, he's like, no, what's going on here? And he tries to finish the job, but Heijin gets in the way. And but the clock ran out before he could get to the baby. They came back, like, came out the ground. They didn't, and I love that. I didn't talk about this, like, what was it, episode 5 or 4, with the guy that got strung up. It's like every time, like, and I think they probably did this specifically, and maybe this is just playing homage to the webtoon itself. But, like, every time those bastards show up, they kill people, like, a little bit differently. They showcase, like, they did the Venom thing of they can summon tendrils. Like, oh, you can try to run. I completely forgot to talk about that. But you saw, like, they were just, like, dragging him all over the courtyard. You know, they didn't beat him up like, you know, I guess that was the beat up. It's just them like knocking him back and then dragging him around. And then without even fully emerging their bodies from the ground, they're like halfway, they're just torsos, which reminds me of like a video game boss fight type of thing of like, oh man, this boss is so big, you're only dealing with like the torso up type of thing. And then it just like burned him. So he kind of got his just desserts. It's like, it's almost karma, but also stuff at the end kind of makes you go, what does that mean? We'll get to that later, but it's like, it's almost like karma because that bastard was a terrible person, and everything he did with the arrowheads, like everything he put Junja and her children through, it's like he led the arrowheads to attack and kill innocent people. It's like, you suck, you know? So he kind of got his comeuppance, and in that moment, like Hyejin comes over and she takes care of the baby. She picks him up. But as she's leaving, like, everyone else gathers around, like, oh my god, like, you know, a lady comes over and gives it, she's like, oh, the poor thing. And then Yuji and the others show up, but the other people block him. It's like, no, like, let it go. And the old man is like, oh, you guys are frauds. You're crooks. And Yuji is like, what'd you call us? Crooks, and proceeds to beat the ever-living life out of this dude in front of everybody. Even one of the other deacons like, yo, Yuji, stop. Like, what are you doing, bro? And he's just like, oh, like, you know, it's like, how dare you call us that? And then the cop arrests him because it's like, no, like, I know that this is all BS. Like, you've been able to run rampant because we believed in what, you know, but it's like, no, now knowing that, you know, it's like, it's sad that it took them being exposed for the liars that they are for you to actually do this. But once again, he's still spewing it at the end of like, oh, you're going to be responsible for more sinners happening and this happening. It's just like, because it is true that the world is going to be back into chaos because there is no rhyme or reason, like without our principles, you know, but once again, he's all about it. He's all in it. So I don't think he's coming at it from a position of like the power I get from it. Maybe he is, but it's just like he is a fanatic who is all about it. You know, once again, like everyone in the committee, just like, you know, like especially Jeongchil is like, no, I'm only in this for the power and position. Like he doesn't care. He's not trying to, look out for the well-nature and well-being of the people. It's like, oh, what would they do? The world would be in chaos. It's like, you don't care. You literally took this job because Jinsu told you would. You literally told Heijin, like, oh, I'm going to be in one of the most powerful religions in the world. You made it clear from the beginning, but it's like you got to keep up pretenses like you care. You don't. Not unless he was so in this for 4 years that he starts like enjoying the smell of his own farts. Essentially, he was so far up his own ass, he started to believe the BS, even though you're with the committee trying to justify the BS. But in that moment, like the rest of the deacons seeing Yuji just get taken away, just walk away. And as Heijin leaves with Tuffy in the cab, and as they're driving away, and she's like, no, you're supposed to go that way to Main Street. And he was like, no, as I came here, I saw there was a block, Miss Min, I'll find a different route there. And it's like, because he saw the video, and he was like this whole God thing, like he's like, I don't care one way or another, because for him, it's like, this world belongs to humans, it's up to us to settle our own stuff. So I think that's the interesting, it's the element of the autonomy of like, God gave us free will to do what we want to. Whether you believe, like, whether he is like, I don't know about the God angle into all of this happening, but we humans, this is our world. We have to be the ones to decide, like, what we do and how we go forward. It's kind of like the main point of it. So I thought that was fascinating. So we ended there, not fully resolved to, like, okay, now the new truth has been put on blast. Like, we don't get to see, like, the downfall. We got that little window there, but I guess going forward, things are definitely, like, the whole like world, like society is going to turn against them hard. But then we get our major twist at the end where like we go back to Junya Park's place, and you're like, what's going on here? I'm like, wait, they're focused on that case. I'm like, is she about to turn back? And she does. I'm like, but why now? She's been dead for 4 years. So what changed? So part of me was wondering, like, could it be that when actual sinners are punished? I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm wondering, like, for everyone they do they bring someone back? Is it kind of like a balancing of the scales for every terrible person that's punished? Because I think at the crux of this is because of self-sacrifice. That the Tofi's parents were willing to, like, you know, Soyun and Young Jae were willing to sacrifice themselves for their baby. So that selflessness restored it, like, set another soul free. I don't know if that's supposed to be the justification, because, like, why would it be now after all of this, you know? Not unless it's, like, coinciding with, because I was about to say, like, disbelief in the new truth. Could that be, like, could it be, like, a legitimate, like, the more people, like, stop personifying and like, because maybe it feeds off of people's things. Like the more people are all about it, the more likely it is to happen, and people get like, there's definitely something going on here. Like maybe hell isn't what people think it is. Like we have to find out, like from Yoonja's perspective, like, do you remember why you were gone? For her, it's probably been like, no, like I just remember dying and that's it. But that also means like, oh, potentially Young Jae as well as Sonyoon could potentially return. But I'm assuming, like, right, it's been 4 years. Her kids are 4 years older. Like, her son is, like, about 17, if not a little old, like 17 or 18. Her daughter is, what, 11 maybe? So that's, you know, if she's able to track them down. So I love that it's like we end on a big mystery of like, now that the religious angle has been removed, going forward, you probably would just focus on the thing of itself or trying to understand, like, because her return changes everything. Because that also adds more fuel to like you guys never told us these people could come back. There's nothing in the doctrine about it. So, because I think she might be either she's the first one to ever do that, because maybe Young Jae and Soyoon doing what they did, sacrificing themselves like that, was like, I think that has to be the key core to it. It's like humans, like maybe it's not about sin, but it's about balancing the scales to some extent, that they brought her back. Because I guess, well, like why her specifically? Not unless she paid her dues in hell, and that's why, once again, I'm throwing out countless theory after theory, but I have no concrete answer for that. And I guess that's the point, not to know. Because I don't know how far the webtoon is along, whether or not in the webtoon these answers already exist, or is it still up in the air in the webtoon? Because I'd be curious to find out like how much of the webtoon has been adapted. Because like I said, I haven't read it. Because like on I didn't find it on webtoons, but I don't know if things have kind of changed subsequently since, so. At the time of me recording this, which it is December 1st at the time of me recording this, it's not been announced whether or not Hellbound is coming back for a second season. I took little glimpses here and there at some articles, but it's still unclear. Obviously, the show left itself wide open to get a second season with some of those developments. But there are also other stories. Like a lot of the characters from the first half of the season, we never got checkup on again. The only person we got was Dong Wook. So it's like, once again, like, what about Hyung-hun and Heejin, his daughter, like, that whole circumstance, like, about Jinsu's hidden body, like, what about any of those angles? Will they be covered up again? Brought up again. But there's also the angle of, what I was reading, too, is that the creator was suggesting that maybe if there was a second season, it wouldn't be in the form, it might not be live action format. I didn't read too much into it, so I don't know if that's suggesting like an animated format, or whether it's just like specifically going back to because I would assume it must be like referencing an anime format, because it's already a webtoon, so not unless you're making specifically a webtoon, because because I don't know like if it's like a 1-for-1 adaptation, which people can have their issues with, but maybe it's also coming from the perspective of, I haven't read the webtoon, so I don't know if it's like a 1-for-1, but usually most adaptations try not to be too 1-to-1. I just heard that complaint recently, or rather criticism, and just recently about something else. I won't get too much into it, but I'm curious, like that wording. Like I probably should have read more into the article, but I'm also in that position. I'm like, I don't want to know too much, because I know the creator has said like he has plans for a season 2. It's just going to be interesting to see whether they do continue in a live action format, or whether that was reference to like a manhwa / webtoon format that the story would continue. I would assume not. I'd assume that was referencing like an animated format, but I could be wrong. But I'd love to see a season 2 for this. I hope this doesn't just end up one of those things of like, I think the story's left open enough, and the creator wants to do a season 2. Like, I just hope enough people watch it that Netflix is like, cool, we'll greenlight a second season. I am curious, is this like a Netflix original all across the board, or is it just like a Netflix original here in the US? Because, Netflix does that sometimes. Because, like, there's stuff that is a Netflix original in one country that might not be one in another. Like Travelers. That was originally just on regular, like, Canadian television. And then the third season became a Netflix exclusive. But here in the US, all 3 seasons were always, like, it was always a Netflix show from the beginning. So it's a licensing right thing sometimes. So I'm just curious. Because part of me was wondering just the way it was edited and stuff. I'm like, oh, that seemed like that might be like a televised thing, like if you're watching this week to week. But like I said, I could be 100% wrong. It might just be Netflix all around. But either way, I'd love to see a season 2 of this. If I can, I'm going to try and track down the webtoon just because I'm curious to like read first parts of it just to compare and contrast and see like what they did change and what they didn't, because I think that's fascinating. But like I said, fingers crossed, hoping for a season 2. It'll probably, if there is going to be one, it'll probably be a little while. It usually takes, there are very rare occasions where Netflix will be like, no, we jumped on top of it, we're getting renewed stuff. I was like, no, it usually takes a while for them to debate and decide of whether or not something warrants a new season or not. Just, no, it's a numbers game, sadly. I wish it wasn't always that, but it makes sense from a business perspective why it is. But it's always a thing of like, man, I don't care, bring back the thing that I like. Once again, I have that entitlement just as a nerd, and I feel like everyone has that same feeling about the TV shows they care about and like, you know, it's just that thing of like, I don't care how many people watched it, I watched it and I like it, I want more. So it's that, you know, perspective. But you know, I always had to recognize, it's like, yeah, it is a business, it is a number of games. If it doesn't do that, if it's not getting more people watching your stuff, then like, you know, it's like, right, it's not worth dumping way more money into them. But you know, that's a whole conversation in itself. But like I said, hopefully we do get a season 2, because I'd love to see where it all take us, especially going forward with like, you know, will we do another time skip? Will we pick up immediately with, I mean, I'd assume we'd pick up immediately because of the whole Junja thing. But to be fair, I'm assuming just the way it was edited that was the same night, but that could have been like days later, a month later, you know, could be years later, but we'll just have to wait and see potentially. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.